Back once again on the aggregate here with Jody Chocolate Thunder Williams. Hello, sir.
Hey, what's going on, man? Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Show us your lights in the background. Show us your tricks. I see the new lights in the background.
Yeah, I want to try to do something different, and I can change any colors and kind of just do it that way, orange, purple, whatever, that kind of thing. But I figure I stay with green to give them the Eagles that won the Super Bowl. So congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles. They finally got over that hump, and more power to them.
Yeah, they really did a number on those Chiefs. And so let's just jump right into the Super Bowl, and we're going to put this to rest. And first of all, I will eat my crow because I was touting Kansas City. Probably more with my heart than with my head, and knowing that Philadelphia had the better offensive line, the better defensive line, the better receivers, the better pretty much everything except coach and quarterback. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of a toss-up game. I think a lot of people were divided by it. My head said Philly. My heart said Kansas City. I went with Kansas City. So, I definitely eaten some crow after that one, especially after it was such an ass whooping. So in your opinion, Jody, why did it turn out the way that it did? What happened?
Well, first of all, I'll start by saying I'm going to eat some crow with you because I had the Chiefs winning 28-21, and also thought that if Philadelphia was going to win, they would have to do one or two things. Special teams, had to be in the plus category, and also like turnovers, or they would have to run Saquon to where the longer you keep the Chiefs offense on the sidelines, the better chance you have. But I say they came to play. I don't know. It just seems like Kansas City was going through the motions, and you could tell it showed because when is the last time you seen Patrick Mahomes perform the way he did on the biggest stage of them all? That was just like, right. I mean, everybody was puzzled, like, what are we doing? What's going on? And they've been down before in games, but for some reason, they just never recovered. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the sideline chat was. I mean, when you go down like that, like you did at halftime, what kind of speech do you give in the locker room for him to come out in the second half and just, hey, let's turn this thing around? You know what I mean?
But yeah, and they, in some form, way, shape, and form, they did turn it around a touch. They outscored Philly in the second half, but they were playing out of desperation. Philadelphia was just trying to run out the clock, so they weren't trying to put more points on the board. But yeah, it's right. Kansas City did look discombobulated, and a lot of that was just the defensive line pressure. I kind of felt like I was watching a Mike Tyson fight, like the early on fights when people really didn't know what was coming at them, and they came in real confident and Jerry Cooney style, and they really thought that they were going to do something. Mike Tyson hits them with the flurry, and they just never recover.
Right, because especially when you have these Super Bowl rematches that happen pretty much close together. Because, like, you got to remember, prior to this, you got to remember Patrick Mahomes, this is his fifth Super Bowl, right? Well, two of them were against the Niners, too. So the second time the Chiefs played the Niners, which was last year, you thought the game might have been different, but it was still more of the same. And I thought this game, with these guys, Nick Sirianni had his squad ready to go, because you also got to realize that a lot of players from that last Super Bowl team that played the Chiefs were still there. And they know what it felt like. And I think there's some story going around saying Jalen Hurts kept the confetti or whatever as a reminder. He wants to get back there. And sure enough, they got back there, and this time they made it count.
Yeah, and there's a reason. And, maybe it's reading your press clippings, or it's fatigue, or it's age, or there's a lot of things you can throw at it. Joe Thuney having to move from guard to left tackle, and them having a backup left guard, and then one of their other offensive linemen getting injured. But those are reasons and excuses. It was really just the Eagles' defensive line just came out and whooped Kansas City's offensive line's ass. And the Eagles do have the best defensive line in the league. They really got after it, and they got after it in a way when Kansas City lost the Super Bowl to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay had just that devastating defense. And Patrick Mahomes would catch the snap and two guys are in his face.
Yeah, Joe McCoy and company was all in his grill. So
absolutely, and that's what it reminded me of was that game. It also reminded me of when both times that Tom Brady lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. It wasn't that the Giants had a better team. Hell, Tom Brady had an undefeated team with Randy Moss coming into one of those Super Bowls.
That was the 50 touchdown season, wasn't it not?
Yeah, and I believe Randy Moss set the touchdown record too. He broke Jerry Rice's touchdown record that year, and they were an unstoppable force. They were undefeated, and the only thing the Giants had better, really, across the board was their D-line was so much better than the Patriots' offensive line. Every time Brady caught the snap, he had somebody in his face.
And I mean, think about it.
Play like that.
You had, Mike Strahan, O.C. Umenyiora, you had Justin Tuck, and it's like going, what the
Pierre-Paul.
Yeah, they just kept coming. And who was the defensive coordinator that year?
Spags, I believe, wasn't it?
Right. So you would think with this, he would dial up some packages where it's like, okay, we can do that. But kudos to the Eagles defense, because to make Kansas City one-dimensional, to make Mahomes throw passes that he would never throw, pick six, that kind of stuff, taking sacks. Travis Kelce wasn't even a threat.
Mm-mm. No, Travis Kelce's biggest attribute is sitting down in a zone and able to find it. So when Mahomes scrambles, he can find him, right? And right. Mahomes couldn't scramble. He just had no time at all. And switch it around, vice versa. Spags could dial up blitz. He could do this. He could do that. But the Eagles' offensive line was better than the Chiefs' defensive line. And they just were against everybody. They're massive. They're great. They took a guy out of New York, and Saquon Barkley's talented. Okay. But they took a guy out of New York who was struggling, who's been struggling for 4 years after his rookie year, and they made him a 2,000-yard rusher. And this was Emmitt Smith-esque. It was taking this running back and turning him into this god figure. And Kansas City had to devote all its resources to stopping Saquon Barkley. And you can't cover anybody, any receiver in the league one-on-one on the outside, let alone guys who are talented like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So you had to pick your poison. They picked to stop Saquon and said, okay, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith can't get up. Well, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith just ran right past their corners.
Oh, it was like time. It reminded me of the Rams' greatest show on turf when they were just flying by the defenders. I'm like going, are y'all playing any kind of defense? Like, what are we doing out here? And again, it's just I can't tell you how dominating they look, the Eagles. And I sit there and kind of go, wow, what do the Chiefs do? And like, is it true that Andy Reid's like calling it quits now or what?
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows yet. I hope he doesn't. I hope he, plays it out. You have to realize too, one thing I forgot to say earlier, back-to-back Super Bowl champions, no back-to-back Super Bowl champion has ever even gone to a Super Bowl again for a third time, right? So it's really hard to win one. It's very hard, super hard to win two. And it's proven impossible to win three, regardless of who you're playing, what you're doing with free agency. And like I said, just the form of fatigue that these guys look like they just didn't know what to do and didn't want to be there. So hopefully Andy Reid sees that, okay, well, I've got a 29-year-old Patrick Mahomes. I've got some Xavier Worthy. I've got Pacheco. I've got some good young talent. If I can shore up my offensive line just a little bit, defensive line's pretty good. Chris Jones, they've got some Karlaftis. They've got some guys there, and they've got some good pieces on defense. But hopefully he realizes their window isn't closed. They've still got a few years. So I'd like to see him stick around. If he goes, boy, I don't know what happens because there's just not another coach like Andy Reid in the league.
Well, I saw a stat the other day, and it said it was actually interesting. So the stat was the teams that went to back-to-back Super Bowls, what they did the following year. Some didn't make the playoffs, and definitely none didn't make it back to the Super Bowl. So you take Tom Brady, when the Patriots went to the Super Bowl, that first 3-year run they had, or those 3 Super Bowl runs, it was interrupted in between by Tampa's, Super Bowl victory. And then like the latter 3, I was interrupted by the Giants and the Eagles, that kind of stuff. So, there's some, yeah, it was weird. The Cowboys in the 90s, they had 3 and 4 years. That one year they didn't make it, they ran into a buzzsaw with the Niners. So there's always some team that sat there. I mean, even my 70s Steelers ran into an Oakland Raiders team that, they pretty much stopped them. So it makes me wonder how next year is going to be.
Yeah, I think of those Cowboys too. And they went to the NFC Championship and lost to that Niner team. And then they were like, give us Deion Sanders, and then we'll go ahead and win it the next year after that. So,
right.
No, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we're only 3 days out. There's still a lot of movement. We'll see. Does this change Mahomes' legacy at all?
No.
So how we view him, or,
only people who are emotional.
Graphic. Go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead.
No, I don't think it does, because you could take some of the best quarterbacks. Everyone nowadays, I think Tom Brady is the best. I figure I look at it differently. The way I grew up, I'm sorry, when you're Joe Montana, you're 4-0 Super Bowls and never threw a pick in the Super Bowl. That kind of speaks volumes to me. But look at Tom Brady. I mean, we consider him the GOAT, but yet, think about it. He's lost to Eli Manning twice, right? He has 3 Super Bowl losses too now. Even though you won 6 of them, or actually, no, he's won 7 actually.
He's won 7 and lost 3.
Right. He takes a loss. Does that mean he's horrible? No. And look at Patrick Mahomes. He's lost what? 2? 1, 3. Does that make him bad? No, it doesn't. So it doesn't. I think they'll be back, but I think now honestly, I think they'll be back, but the gap is closing now.
Well, I think, and there's a big debate, and this is maybe an off-season football debate, and we've talked about it before, is there's a difference between best and greatest. Tom Brady is the greatest right now because he does have 10 appearances and he's got 7 rings, and nobody's even close to him. You have to get probably to 5 to even have the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mahomes, he's young, but again, this is the NFL. You don't stay good forever. So, or your team doesn't stay good forever. So we'll see how he does. I think Mahomes is cemented in that second category. I think Tom's at the top of the mountain. And I think in that second category, you get the Montana, you get the Mahomes. There's people in there. If you watch them play, you saw their greatness, like Elway and Peyton, and
right.
Even a guy who never won one. I put Dan Marino in that second category.
Oh, yeah.
So there's guys or Jim Kelly, guys like that. So there's that second category, and I think Mahomes is firmly in that second category. If he would have won, there would have started being a debate because he had 3 in a row. Right now, still there's no debate. Tom Brady is the greatest. I don't think he's the best because I think there's a lot better quarterbacks that there are in the world, but I think he is the greatest because greatest means you had the greatest career. You go back to who's the greatest running back? All signs point to Emmitt Smith, but is Emmitt Smith really the greatest running back? Because I remember guys like Jim Brown and Barry Sanders and Gale Sayers and Eric Dickerson, Marcus Allen. I mean, I could name 20 better running backs than Emmitt Smith.
It depends on what are you basing it on? Because who had the best single season rushing? Eric Dickerson, right? But overall, long period of time, you could have said Walter, you could have said Jim Brown, you could have said Emmett. It's always a what if. What if Barry Sanders had the O-line that Emmett had? Are we talking about the same thing? What if Barry Sanders said, you know what, I'm done, and he was that close to clipping the record, he decided to walk away on his own terms, But it's almost like the debate in basketball, and I'll use this theory for Montana and Brady, where you go, well, look at LeBron. He's been to what, 10, 11 NBA finals? I'm like, yeah, but his record's not the best. Whereas MJ, he went to 6. He was 6 for 6. Never sniffed a game 7 at all at the finals, and he stayed with that one team. Whereas LeBron, he's doing his own, carving out history because I'm going to do with this franchise, that franchise, and that franchise. So when I compare the two of Brady and Mahomes, if you go back at Brady, look how many stars they came to New England, which means, hey, I'm not going to pay you top dollar like this team is, but if you're going to win championships and we got the trophies to prove it, then take this pay cut and we'll go ahead and make this thing happen if you want to win. So how many people took pay cuts to play with Tom Brady just to make sure they get that championship? How many from Kansas City are going to do that is where it comes down to, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they might get some veteran guys. I mean, they did pick up DeAndre Hopkins. Are they going to go after a guy like Cooper Kupp?
Right.
Myles Garrett's the big free agent right now. They probably can't afford those guys, but I'm just saying guys like that. And yeah, like I said, I think it's all best versus greatest. So I think Mahomes is a better quarterback than Tom Brady, but I still give the greatest conversation goes to Tom. So Mahomes, his legacy didn't really change at all. Now Jalen Hurts won the MVP. Josh Sweat has been coming out and saying, I should have won the MVP. Josh Sweat had 2.5 sacks. He was the main protagonist on that defensive line, just getting in Mahomes' face time and time again. There's some precedents for pass rushers getting the MVP. I believe Von Miller won it. And Richard Dent, I believe, won the MVP in '85. Yep. So there's been some precedents of these defensive players getting this MVP.
Well, I think didn't Dwight Smith have it for the Tampa?
Yeah. Except that's because he had like 2 interceptions, I think. So
Larry Brown,
defensive player, yeah, totally defensive player. And so when I was watching it, I texted this out on our group text. I said, boy, Josh Sweat should win MVP. And of course they give it to the quarterback because nowadays everything's about the quarterback where, I mean, I could have hit those guys. As wide open as those receivers were, all you had to do was pull the pin out of the grenade and throw it up and they're going to run underneath it. So,
yeah,
I mean, props to Jalen Hurts. He hit the open guys. He did what he needed to do. But really, he was very much a game manager, and Josh Sweat was the number one reason why they won that game, in my opinion. What do you think? Did they get it right with Jalen Hurts, or should they have given it to Josh Sweat?
No, I don't think they got it right. And again, there's this thing about the quarterback. He's the fucking even to high school, the star quarterback. Gets all the publicity. But when your team loses, they get all the blame also. And I think, when you play the way, Josh played, I'm thinking, why not? And I'm biased because I'm a defensive player. So I'm biased.
I was going to say, you put your hand on the ground. See, that's your spot.
Yeah. I mean, he did what he had to do. When you disrupt, an offense like the way he did, it's like, why not? I mean, when Richard Dent won with the 85 Bears, you could have get it to anybody actually, because the way they just attacked, the Patriots, you could have gave it to anybody, honestly, but somebody had to get picked. I think that's how I feel about that, but that's neither here nor there. Same thing with Tampa. I mean, Dwight. I mean, I think Dexter Jackson had a pick. Derek Brooks had a pick 6.
Right.
And maybe a sack or something like that. So I mean, it could have Simeon Rice and Warren Sapp disrupting the backfield. So you had to give it to somebody, right? But with this, I think they should have gave it to the defense. That's just my opinion, but. Who cares what I think, So
the weirdest one that I thought of because I started thinking back on defensive MVPs back to when, like I said, 85 was the first Super Bowl that I really watched. Mm-hmm. And so I was probably 9 and saw Richard Dent, and I saw that defensive line just killing, who was there? Was it Grogan and
Tony Eason?
Tony Eason, yeah. I think they subbed in, like they played 2 quarterbacks because the first one got knocked out. So they were just killing that offensive line of New England. And I look back and I see that defense. And over the years, we've seen some defense. Ray Lewis won it, but I think that was a story thing because Ray Lewis, he didn't have a great game defensively. He tipped a few passes, but they gave it to him. And I think that was kind of a storyline deal.
If you look back at that, if I'm not mistaken, I think he had like 5 tackles. That's it.
Yeah, he tipped 2 passes, I believe, that were intercepted, and he may have forced a fumble, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that one. But yeah, he didn't really that wasn't an MVP type performance, but that was the storyline, right? I think this one was like, if the Eagles won, they were going to give it to Jalen Hurts because of quote unquote the story. They want to make these quarterback rivalries because they've got the young kid coming up in Washington. You've got Goff, you've got Stafford at the end of his career. They want to make these NFC quarterback. Oh, he's a Super Bowl MVP. Right. Giving it to Josh Sweat isn't sexy, but it was the right thing to do, and they fucked that one up, I think.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it's just like, come on, man. It's like the eyeball test that we all talk about, right? The eyeball test. Like, how do you not see this? Like, you kidding me? But okay. I mean, I honestly, if I'm Josh, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I should have won, but I ain't worried about it because guess what? I'm getting fitted for a Super Bowl ring, and not a lot of people could sit there and say that.
Yeah. So, but good for him for advocating for himself. I mean, maybe he's trying to get a new contract or get free agency and get paid. Who knows? So we talked about how we looked at Patrick Mahomes. Does this change at all how we look at Saquon Barkley now?
I think he's your front runner for next year's MVP.
Which would be nice if we could return to a league where running backs can win MVP. I mean, you just don't see it very much anymore. It's all quarterbacks.
Right.
It's not running backs. It's not receivers. It's all these just quarterbacks. And so, so Saquon Barkley, he has a ring now. So you look at we start talking legacy.
And so does fucking Kenny Pickett now. I got to believe that. Fuck me.
Well, this guy right here, this is what, when I think of Saquon Barkley now, I kind of think of him because Saquon Barkley was the reason that their offense was good, right? Because you had to dedicate all these resources to Saquon Barkley, and they stopped him. They shut Saquon Barkley down, but they left their corners one-on-one, and that's where they got burned, right?
Right.
But in actuality, it was because of Saquon. So, and Saquon had the big year. He led his team to the Super Bowl, which reminds me of Emmitt Smith. Also reminds me of Terrell Davis a lot because Terrell Davis was he was the reason Josh Elway got rings, right? Or John Elway, because John Elway was trying for years and years and years. He just get to the Super Bowl and just get smacked by 100 points. And then Davis comes along and he leads his team to it. So I kind of look at him as Terrell Davis now that he has the ring. Do you look at Saquon the same now, or do you look at him different because he has the ring?
No, I think I think now that he got the ring, it's going to motivate him more. I think he might have something to prove. Like, look, 2,000-yard rusher. Did he get 2,000 or did they sit him down in the fourth quarter? I can't remember.
They sat him. Then he got 2,000, but they sat him down the 17th game because they just didn't need him.
Because he has an argument to go, if it wasn't for my offensive production, would y'all even make it to the Super Bowl?
No, they wouldn't have. This would not have been a Super Bowl argument.
And I'm not saying that make an argument because now, this is my contract year, but it's like going, look, man, Super Bowl, run this ball. I want my 2,000 now. I don't want to make it seem like he should be like me, but at the same time, it's like, what are we doing here? So I think, next year it's going to be like, all right, but the one thing you don't want to do, what they always talk about is that Super Bowl hangover, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing you don't want because, I feel bad for franchises like the Atlanta Falcons. Anytime you're up 20-3 on the Patriots in the Super Bowl, them motherfuckers never recovered.
Never recovered. That destroyed their franchise.
That they never recovered from that. And we're talking like, wow, I mean, like Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan was MVP that year. I believe
he was MVP that year.
Led his team there. I'm like going, all right, cool. I'm like, are they really beating New England? Like, I mean, my jaw dropped. Just like our jaw dropped when the Chiefs were down 24-0 at halftime. The way they were playing at the end of 3 quarters, I'm like, Patriots are cooked. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. I don't know if Atlanta got, comfortable. But what I do know is that they just fell apart. They have yet to recover from that as a franchise.
Yeah, it can do bad things. So we'll see what happens next year. Yeah, Saquon might be motivated to try and win MVP. I mean, I believe he was third in the voting this year behind the 2 quarterbacks. And he could do it. I mean, if they get their offensive line back, they do lose their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. He's going to be head coach of the Saints. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. And that always kind of is a little bit of a monkey wrench in things. I know they'll probably try and keep things the same, but it's not the same if you have somebody different. So, how do we look at Jalen Hurts now? And before I have you answer, I want to throw up a graphic here that you might think is kind of funny, but it totally reminded me of it when I saw the Super Bowl. So I'm watching the Super Bowl, and I'm thinking, Jalen Hurts is Jeff Hostetler. Like, he's got a dominant defense. He's got a running back who is drawing all the attention. Mm-hmm. Now, Jalen Hurts, they went downfield a little bit more. New York they had probably like Stephen Baker and, they had Dave Meggett out of the backfield. And I mean, they had some guys that were okay. Mark Ingram, I believe, was on that team.
Yeah.
But I look at him and I go, shit, he's Jeff Hostetler. He can scramble. He's a good little runner. He's got one Super Bowl. Now, if Jalen Hurts gets a second Super Bowl, he launches himself into a whole different category. But I'm bumping Jalen Hurts from the, 0-for-1 Super Bowl loser category. Now he's bumped up to one Super Bowl with a great defense and an awesome offensive line and running game. So he's kind of a la Trent Dilfer with the Ravens, Brad Johnson with the Buccaneers, Hitler.
I tell you what, two things come to mind. You don't want to be Jeff Hostetler because remember after he won that 1990 Super Bowl with the Giants against Buffalo, then what happened? Didn't have a good year, right? End of his contract, went to the Raiders, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Now, if Jalen happens to win another Super Bowl, now you got to put him in a conversation with Peyton Manning because Peyton Manning, he went 2 for 2. He lost 2 and he also won 2.
I will never put him in the conversation with Peyton Manning. I'd put him in the conversation with Eli Manning, maybe.
I'm not saying like talent-wise. I'm just saying from a record standpoint. Like, okay.
Okay, see, greatness. You're talking about greatness then.
Right. Like, okay, like, you have to. Because, I mean, yeah, Jalen Hurts won, but don't forget, he did lead his team to Super Bowl prior to that. They just didn't win, but it wasn't like they got blown out, though, either. So, look at Peyton Manning. Your 2 wins was with the Broncos and the Colts, right? And your 2 losses with the Broncos and the Colts. So, it's almost like, well, what are we doing here, And,
I was going to say he has a little – now, he's obviously not the quarterback that Elway was, but the storyline has an Elway feel too. Like he led his team because the first Super Bowl was Jalen Hurts leading his team to the Super Bowl. That offensively, that was him. And again, great offensive line, Jason Kelce. But then he needed a running back. He had to have that running game. Mm-hmm. And they had a pretty good running game. I mean, they had some good players and a good offensive line, so they had a good running game. He needed that dynamic running back to draw the attention. So it's an Elway-esque story as well.
Right. And again, you have to have that. You got the pieces around you because you still got some of the those pieces left over from that Super Bowl that you lost to that same team with the Chiefs. And now you got Saquon was like, okay, this might be the piece that puts us over. And it was. Even though Saquon wasn't like, had gaudy numbers, but he drew enough attention where if Saquon's not the running back, you're not getting those one-on-one coverages. You're like, I'd rather have you beat us on the ground than to beat us through the air. But because Saquon is such a threat, all hands on deck, let's go ahead and try to put 8 in the box if you need to.
Yeah, last time they played, I think Mike Sanders was their main running back. They may have had LeGarrette Blount.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but I mean, it was running back by committee. This one was like Saquon and Kenneth Gainwell. And if Kenneth Gainwell is their main back, they ain't winning the Super Bowl.
No.
Because Spags is doing exotic blitzes. He's doing exotic coverages. His game plan was just stop Saquon. And Jalen Hurts did enough to beat him. He's a capable quarterback. He's a great game manager. He's a good running quarterback. And part of my eating the crow, too, is that I always said it's going to be really hard for a running quarterback to win a Super Bowl. And we just watched it on Sunday. He is a runner first, a thrower second, and he won a Super Bowl. So kudos to him because he did something that Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick couldn't do. Mm-hmm. They couldn't capitalize. So it's it's the way too early prediction because we don't know about anything as far as like, free agents and coaching moves and things like that. Give me your way too early Super Bowl prediction for next year.
It won't be the Lions. They've lost too much. I don't think they'll go far.
Both coordinators.
Dude, you lose both coordinators and some assistant coaches. Like, dude, seriously. Yeah. But that's what happens when you win a Super Bowl. Because now it's like, oh, can we get permission to talk to this coordinator or this position coach? Happens in college, happens in the pros. And Detroit just got that window might have just slammed. Seriously. If I'm going to make an early prediction, not voting with my heart, because I'm going to say Pittsburgh. That's because my heart is. But I would say out of the AFC, I'm still go with the same team. I'm going to go with Buffalo. I picked them to go this
Buffalo
year.
Gets over the hump.
I thought they were going to give it a hump this year, but didn't happen. But they're like right there. And I think, and no disrespect to Kansas City, but you're at a point where teams are fucking gearing up to beat you now. Because now it's like, okay, Josh Burrow's getting better. Josh Allen's getting better. You can even go Lamar Jackson getting better.
Yeah, the AFC's a gauntlet.
The list goes on, and we're talking about just the AFC. Like they got some serious talent. I mean, Houston's pretty good too, but they all they can do is win one wild card game and then they're done. So that's just who they are. But I would say Buffalo, and if everything works out right, why not have Philly up there again? Because I don't think the Niners are coming back. They had too many injuries, and they'll lose some people too. So, I don't think Green Bay has the horses to compete. I don't even know who would be a threat at this point.
No, the only thing you can say is with some additions, especially to the offensive line, it's going to be tough in the NFC for anybody if Philadelphia keeps that defensive line intact, because that's gonna beat everybody. Washington has some up and comers. They've got a young team. They've got a rookie who's good, who's on a rookie contract, so they can spend money. They're talking about them going out and getting Myles Garrett. They're one of the front runners. So if they can shore up their offensive line, I think they would be the biggest contender. But yeah, I'd say Philly in the NFC. I'd go with you with Buffalo because, I mean, especially if they can pick up a receiver, if they can pick up a number one receiver and not have a bunch of, second and third tier receivers. I think they can do it. And I think they will do it because Kansas City, I believe, and I hate to say this, but just like you talked about, there was the early run with Brady in New England. Then they had a lull for a few years where they didn't win any. They were good, but they didn't win any, or, they kind of stepped away for a minute because you do have to rebuild your team. That's how the salary cap works in the NFL. But then they came back with an onslaught. And I think they may have a few years where they're not going to the Super Bowl every year, but they're rebuilding and retooling. Maybe Andy Reid retires, they get a new coach, they get used to them. And then they probably roar back when Mahomes is in like his mid-30s. I think that's realistic. So Buffalo and Philly, that's not a bad pick at all.
I think with the AFC, it's Buffalo, Baltimore, KC, and then everybody. Then maybe Cincinnati knock on the door. Other than that, there's nobody that's going to compete. Even my Steelers, because we don't know what we're going to do for a quarterback. So that's just what it is, Yeah,
the Steelers can figure out, and I don't think it's anybody who's there now. No. I think they need. If they can figure out a quarterback, but then by the time they figure out a quarterback, now your O-line and your defense is aging. Like you have to have, it's like getting that perfect meal together where you got to get your awesome protein and your vegetables have to be good and your carb has to be good and everything just has to come together. Yeah, it just doesn't happen. And that's why winning a Super Bowl is so hard. Repeating is very, very tough and has only been done, X amount of times. And three-peating has never been done. When you've seen three-peating, like, and for instance, the NBA, you see that shit happen all the time. Not all the time. Let me back that up.
It's not like it used to.
Not like it used to, but there's a history of it happening. Because
in comparison,
together. Yeah, and you can spend, and Golden State probably should have maybe was the last one who should have three-peated.
Well, I mean, you got the LeBron era because there was 4 straight years in the finals where it was Cleveland and Golden State. Like, okay, you know, what's going to change this time? And 2016 was the year that they kind of snapped that situation where they could have had a three-peat. So,
yeah. If they had, you know, if that 73 win team finishes and then they pick up Durant and win 2 more. Of course, Durant probably doesn't go there if they win the championship, so that's a moot point. But still, they were the closest. But in the NBA, it's happened. In the NFL, it's never happened. So, and like I said, that's why I love the NFL, because the salary cap, they make things happen where bad teams can become good teams become bad.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. That's all I really had for the Super Bowl. We're gonna pop out a quick Fab 5 questionnaire real quick. Are you ready for the lightning round questions?
Yeah, let's do that. My dog is bothering me because I got to take him outside. So let's hit it.
Let's hit it. Dijon or yellow mustard?
Dijon.
Sandwich. You're a Dijon guy, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I like mustard, but Dijon has that little tangy zing to it. So
it does. What about on like a hot dog?
If we have it, yeah, but if we don't, then I'll just go with what we got. So, but if I had a choice, I'd say Grey Poupon.
Okay, you are a cultured motherfucker. All right. And I like Dijon on sandwiches. I think I like yellow on hot dogs.
Right.
Whose career would you rather have? You rather have Allen Iverson's career and be the man, or would you rather have Robert Horry's career and win the rings?
Robert Horry, easy.
Well, you didn't even hesitate on that. You want the rings over the 30 points a game and changing the culture of the game and being well known?
Well, I mean, what are we in the pros for? To win, right? It's all about winning. And here, I'll use a good example. So when you ask Carmelo Anthony, you want to win or you just want to be the man? How far did he get? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Robert Horry can say, I've won championships in L.A., San Antonio, and Houston. But yeah, I'm not saying he's the greatest he's not the GOAT, even though he has more rings than Karl Malone. He has more rings than Barkley, Ewing, but that doesn't mean that, he knows what it takes to win. I mean, what are we doing here? We're here to win. Yeah, you're going to make your money regardless. But, if I can win a championship, Robert Horry can look back and go, yeah, I had a heck of a career. No doubt.
Yeah, he's got, I think he has 7. He's got a bunch of them.
Something like that. He got the back-to-back with Houston. He got the 3 with the Lakers, and then what was it? 1 with San Antonio.
I don't know if he has 1 or 2. That's the thing. He's got 6 or 7. He's got somewhere in that range. All right. Moving on. So we all knew this TV from when we were a kid, a little console TV. When you think of old TV and you were sitting around watching TV, what television commercial comes to mind right away that you were like, oh man, I totally remember that commercial?
Watching that kind of TV?
Yeah, like you're in the 80s and the commercial comes on. What's the first commercial that when you think back to that time that you're like, oh yeah, I remember that commercial?
That Christmas commercial from Payless?
What did it have on it? What was it?
I have to play it on my phone. You'll fucking crack up.
It's
seriously, like if I put this on here, you're gonna be like, what? Because it rains 80s to me, right? So
because I think of like, where's the beef? And I also think of the Grey Poupon commercial where the 2 limos pull up next to each other. Right. And the guy's like, excuse me, you have any Grey Poupon? And the limo guy hands it to him through the back window. And
you ready for this?
Yeah, go for it.
We got a snowstorm, so our freaking internet's being weird right now. But
oh God, it's supposed to ice here tomorrow, and everybody's freaking out.
Well, it's like supposed to be 1 degree tonight, so.
Oh, that's stupid.
Yeah. Oh, I hate freaking stupid ads. Like, dude, you're killing me with this stuff. So.
Oh, YouTube.
Yeah. It'll come on. But anyway, yeah, so this that commercial, But yeah, the Grey Poupon, where's the beef from Wendy's? That was Wendy's, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Where's the beef?
Yeah, so
back when we didn't know what to do when they had square patties.
People lost their mind, huh?
Yeah. Well, let's move on. We'll move on to the next one if you're still dialing that up. You got it?
Hear it?
Shop Payless this Christmas for practical gift ideas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, that's what I think of.
Yes.
Or those Tom Peterson commercials.
And Glorious too, baby.
Yeah.
It was like, wait, it used to be just Tom Peterson, and then all of a sudden Gloria started appearing. It's like, wait, where did you come from?
I think he was starting to go bankrupt. She kind of stepped in and co-signed or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. She saved his ass, but
right.
All right. Moving on to the next one. Who was your first celebrity crush? When you were hitting that puberty and you're like, oh, she's fine. You know, you see him on TV or music. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Not one of these.
No, I just threw these up here because these, you know, Daisy Duke was a lot of people's first celebrity crush, or, you know, what's her name from Weird Science. So who was your first crush?
I would say it was two of them, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It was Denise Huxtable and Kelly Kapowski of, yeah, those are my two. Kelly and I guess you just a third one, Alyssa Milano.
Yes, yeah, and that's why I was just like, oh yeah, you got to go Alyssa Milano. I can't lie, Daisy Duke too. You know, as a kid, you start getting those feelings, and you're like, oh wait, she got them shorts, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are Kelly Kapowski's a famous answer to that question. All right, and then the last one. Again, if I can get the graphic to work here. What's the most used emoji on your phone?
Probably the laughing one.
Just the laughing one? Now,
the one where it tilts to the side with the tears?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you, like if somebody sends a funny text, do you send the emoji separate or do you hold it down and then reply with the laugh?
If I think it's funny, I'll just hold it down and reply. But, you know, if I want to add something, I will. So,
yeah. Mike and I have a fun little game where if one of us texts the other one, it's just immediate reply with a middle finger. And it's just for no reason at all. It's like, you know, we'll call and be like, oh, hey, I'll call you back in just a minute. Middle finger right away. So, but yeah, I also like the one where he's like, like, what the hell does that mean? So, all right, good times. Well, we do appreciate you showing up today. We had a lot of folks who couldn't make it today. We appreciate you. Bad weather and everything. Happy early birthday. Birthday's tomorrow. You're going to be 27, right?
What's that?
You're going to be 27.
I wish. My body tells me different.
When you're out there shoveling that snow, it tells you different.
Yes, there's no bitch. You're not 27. It's like, yeah, you're right.
Well, yeah, happy early birthday for tomorrow. Happy belated birthday to Kendall just a few days ago. Mm-hmm. And Haven, you've got two kids within a week of you.
On certain years, we're all in the same week, like this year. So,
yeah, you guys are all in the same week, and my daughter Bailey is on Sunday.
Yeah,
and then Valentine's Day is on Friday. It's like a jam-packed week for you.
It's a busy month for the Williams household.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for showing up today, and have a great rest of your night. Signing off from the aggregate. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks for having me on. Take care, everybody.